Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking the completely fascinating and honestly pretty messy reality of digital democracy. We're going to see how academic research literally helped the US government survive the internet. So, we're looking at something called eRulemaking. Basically, this is the process where federal agencies propose new regulations on everything from organic food standards to air pollution, and then they open the floor for public comment. Now, for decades, this was all done on paper, but when the internet arrived, well, it changed absolutely everything.
Okay, let's dive right in with a really provocative challenge from back in 1997 that questioned all that early internet hype. Long before social media took over our lives, researchers like Hearn and Schauk were already waving red flags. They warned us not to blindly accept the myth that cyberspace is the ultimate pinnacle of real democracy. They were asking a really fundamental question. Does putting a civic process online automatically make it more democratic? Or does it just, change the nature of the noise?
Here's our agenda for today. First, the digital democracy debate. Second, enter Dr. Stuart Schulman. Third, the form letter avalanche. Fourth, testing the deliberation theory. Fifth, developing tools for rules. And finally, the polar bear case.
Section 1. The digital democracy debate.
Let's start with the initial theoretical battle lines that got drawn around digital participation. When the government first started letting citizens email their thoughts on proposed regulations, academics instantly split into two camps about what this meant for the country. But to really grasp that debate, we have to first define deliberative democracy. Think of this as the absolute gold standard of civic engagement. In a truly deliberative democracy, citizens don't just vote or click a button to register a preference. They actually engage with each other, they reflect on different viewpoints, and they might even change their minds. It's all about substantive dialogue, not just a mechanical counting of noses.
The contrast here between the optimists and the skeptics is super stark. You had the cyber optimists who looked at the internet and saw this modern-day, nationwide town hall, a place where citizens would read each other's comments and build a really rich dialogue. But then you had the skeptics. They warned that the internet would just lead to these click-to-send echo chambers. They were worried people would just blast out isolated opinions without ever actually listening to the other side.
Section 2. Enter Dr. Stuart Schulman. So to find out who was actually right, we introduce our protagonist, Dr. Stuart W. Schulman. He's the guy who essentially bridged the gap between high-minded academic theory and the messy reality of the federal government. Following the timeline of his National Science Foundation-funded research, we move from early USDA experiments on organic food standards in 2001 all the way to massive public comment testbeds. And crucially, this academic research eventually led to the commercial development of platforms like DiscoverText, which facilitated a real-world tech transfer to the Fish and Wildlife Service by 2008. Schulman realized early on that to understand the internet's impact on democracy, you can't just philosophize. You literally have to look at the actual data flowing into federal agencies.
Section 3. The form letter avalanche. Well, what Dr. Schulman's team actually found when they looked at all that data was a massive procedural problem. Instead of this rich, two-way deliberation everyone hoped for, federal agencies were completely buried by what became known as the spam cannon. Organized interest groups from all across the political spectrum figured out they could use the internet to generate massive email campaigns. With a single click, citizens could just send a pre-written form letter straight to an agency. Suddenly, the government was drowning in hundreds of thousands of completely identical emails.
The hard data reveals just how intensely identical form submissions dominated original thoughtful comments. The numbers across highly contested environmental rules like the Waters of the United States Rule, the Mercury Emissions Rule, and CAFE fuel economy standards show that the electronic form letters absolutely dwarf the original electronic submissions. For the Mercury Rule alone, the EPA received hundreds of thousands of emails, and the vast majority of them were just exact copies of each other.
Section 4. Testing the deliberation theory.
This overwhelming hard data forced researchers to seriously question the prevailing theories of online participation. I mean, if 90% of the public's input is just exact duplicates of a form letter drafted by an advocacy group, are we actually experiencing digital democracy? The crucial question is this: are these digital tools making us more deliberative or just way louder? Dr. Schulman's team did surveys and analyzed the text of these submissions, and they found that while individuals totally felt engaged, the actual text they submitted showed almost zero evidence of true deliberation. They weren't referencing other citizens' viewpoints at all, they were literally just clicking send.
Dr. Schulman ultimately concluded that these massive campaigns completely failed to foster true dialogue. In fact, they acted a lot more like a digital brute force attack on the system. He perfectly summarized it by saying, the mass email campaign is an odd and counterproductive tribute to non-deliberative nose counting. Basically, it forces federal rule writers to waste massive amounts of taxpayer time and money just sorting through exact duplicates, searching desperately for any unique, substantive, scientific, or legal arguments that might be hidden inside all that noise.
Section 5. Developing tools for rules.
So, with the deliberative town hall officially defeated by the spam cannon, researchers had a realization. You can't just stop the internet, right? And you definitely shouldn't stop citizens from participating. Instead, you have to upgrade the government's ability to process the data. To solve this, Schulman teamed up with computer scientists from places like Carnegie Mellon and USC to build language processing tools to manage this totally chaotic reality. They knew simple keyword searches were going to be completely useless when you're dealing with 500,000 emails. They needed advanced natural language processing.
This collaboration led to the creation of the Rule Writer's Workbench, which was a prototype software that later evolved into the commercial platform DiscoverText. This software was packed with powerful text mining capabilities built specifically for government analysts. It could classify text, detect opinions, and extract summaries. But the absolute most critical features? Duplicate and near-duplicate detection. Why is that so important? Because if a citizen took a form letter but added even one unique sentence about their personal experience, the agency is legally obligated to read and consider that specific unique sentence.
Section 6. The Polar Bear Case. To see how this software transitioned into the real world, we turn to a spectacular collision of academic theory, computer science, and federal bureaucracy. In the late 2000s, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service faced a monumental bureaucratic task. They proposed listing the polar bear as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. As you can imagine, this was a highly emotional, hotly contested, and globally publicized issue tied to habitat loss and climate change. Because of all that intense public interest, the agency got hit with a staggering 540,000 public comments submitted by email. Think about that for a second. For a small team of federal scientists and analysts up in Alaska, trying to read and categorize over 500,000 emails manually, it's physically impossible.
And out of that massive avalanche, a single environmental advocacy group's campaign generated exactly 213,196 unmodified form letters. That is nearly 250,000 emails containing the exact same sequence of words, completely cluttering the docket.
This is exactly where the academic research saved the day, using a brilliantly named tool called Dorian, which stands for Duplicate Removal in Large Collection. Dorian was designed specifically to isolate unique text from endless duplicates. It could scan hundreds of thousands of documents, group all the identical form letters into one single pile, and instantly highlight the near duplicates, meaning the letters where a citizen actually bothered to type in their own original thoughts.
Thanks to Durian and the commercial development of platforms like DiscoverText, Fish and Wildlife Service personnel in Anchorage successfully sorted and analyzed the data. Instead of spending months just trying to figure out which emails were unique, a single analyst could efficiently bypass the spam cannon altogether. They could instantly set aside those 213,000 exact copies and instead spend their valuable time actually reading the substantive, unique, and scientifically relevant comments that the public submitted. The software didn't silence anyone, it just organized the noise so that everyone could actually be heard.
We'll wrap up with a final, provocative thought. The internet gave everyone a megaphone, but interest groups learned how to turn those megaphones into a spam cannon. As digital participation continues to grow, we have to ask ourselves, to achieve true digital democracy, should we focus less on generating more emails and more on building the tools needed to actually listen? When we build better tools to understand the noise, we ensure the substantive voices in our society don't just get buried. Keep looking for the signal in the noise. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.